Jared Dillian. Own your money, own your life.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show. This is a show about money. Please call in to talk about your money at 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is the Jared Dillian Show. And you can also look us up at jareddillianmoney.com. That's jareddillianmoney.com. Or you can find me on Twitter at DailyDirtNap, which is lots of fun. And my wife is a professor. She is a professor of archaeology, and she has professor friends. And my wife has no student loan debt. And that's sort of a function of she took out a little bit of student loans as an undergrad, about $10,000, which she paid off herself. And then in grad school, she mostly got it paid for working as a graduate assistant and TAing and stuff like that. I don't think she had any loans coming out of grad school. So for her entire, PhD education, she really only owed about $10,000, which is pretty manageable. Me personally, I went to a service academy for undergrad. It was free. And for grad school, I paid for most of it while I went. I ended up owing about $15,000, and I paid that off in a year. So, our student loans situation has been pretty good. So look at me. I am warm as toast. Her friends, not so much. Some of her friends have high 5 figures in debt, 6 figures in debt. And the payments are pretty high, and they're just sort of limping along, making these payments. And I started to hear these rumors. I started to hear these rumors about how these people, my wife's friends, were not paying off their student loans because they were going to get them forgiven. And these people were utterly convinced they were going to get their student loans forgiven. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. Nobody's forgiving any student loans. This, by the way, this was like, 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that. This is way before Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and anybody was talking about forgiving student loans. So I was like, nobody is forgiving student loans. As it turns out, I was wrong. There is a government program called the PSLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And basically the idea is that if you spend a lot of money on your education and you don't work in the private sector, you work in the public sector, then, you're, I guess, doing something altruistic and not making money. And so you should therefore be eligible for getting these student loans forgiven. And in, the particular case for the school where my wife is, the school is 5% owned by the state. So it is technically a public institution. 95% private, but 5% public. So it's technically a public institution, which means that all the professors that work there are public service workers and eligible for loan forgiveness. And what I had no idea about this. They are, for the most part, holding out for student loan forgiveness from this program. By the way, and this is sort of a longer editorial on student loans, and you'll probably hear me say this a whole bunch of times. The student loan situation is totally screwed up, and it's easily fixed. It's actually easily fixed. There are hard problems and there are easy problems. This is an easy problem. And there are 3 things you do to fix it. So first of all, Sallie Mae got nationalized back in 2009, 2010. So all student loans are public now. So the first step is to privatize them and put them back in private hands. The second step is when you apply for a student loan, if you're 18 years old, you're going to college, you apply for a student loan, they do a credit check on you and your parents. They do a credit check. They don't do a credit check right now. Don't you think that's weird? If you want to buy a house, they check your credit. If you want to buy a car, they check your credit. If you want to borrow $200,000 in student loans, you just have to fog a mirror. Like, you just have to, have a pulse, and they'll give you the money. Don't you think that's weird? So, basically what we need to do is some due diligence on these borrowers And, a lot of people would complain about that. They would say, well, then some people, some people wouldn't be able to go to college. I'm like, yes, that is the point. That is the point. And everybody is talking about how lots of people are going to college. You shouldn't be going to college. And maybe people should be just high school graduates and have a trade or something like that. That's how you get there, is you start analyzing the credit of the people who want to borrow. The third way you fix this, you have to do all three of these things, 1, 2, 3. The third way you fix this is you allow people to discharge student loans in bankruptcy, right? So right now, if you have $100,000 in student loans and you go bankrupt, you don't get rid of that debt. It stays there. It follows you around forever. And not only is that not fair to the borrower, the reason that screws up the system is basically the whole thing with borrowing and lending is that if you don't pay what you owe, then it hurts the lender. And it enforces discipline on the lender. The lender says, ouch, I just lost $100,000. Next time I won't lend it so freely, right? So there's no discipline here. So basically the government gives out free money. They don't check anybody's credit, and there's no consequences if people default. And you wonder why we have a screwed up system. So if you want to fix it, that's how you do it. It's really easy. But, people, we'll talk about this later, but people don't really want to fix it. What they want to do is just forgive it all, and which basically means it just goes on the budget. They just put it to the taxpayer. We'll talk about that later. I just don't understand why student loans are so easy to get. They should be harder to get. Anyway, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, let's get back on topic. The idea was to give financial relief to people who had spent a lot of money on higher education but chose to work in less financially rewarding jobs. And here's the problem with this program. 41,000 people have applied for it. Guess how many people they've granted forgiveness? 200. Out of 41,000 people, they've only forgiven 200 loans. That is less than 1%. It's about 0.5%. So this is the part that's crazy. You have hundreds and thousands of people who pay the minimum on their student loans, which is mostly interest. And by the way, the balances are getting bigger and bigger. They pay and pay and pay and pay for years. And they say, I'm going to get it forgiven. And then this program doesn't forgive anybody's loans. They only forgive 0.5%. And the reason is that the requirements are pretty stringent. They have to have like a specific loan. It's called direct loan instead of other types of loans. They have to be in a specific repayment plan. They have to work in the right type of job. And here's the kicker. They have to make 120 successful payments in a row. So not miss a payment for 10 years, and they have to be the minimum amount. They cannot pay down any principal. And that's what you have to do to get your student loans forgiven if you're a public service employee. This is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. We'll talk about this in a second. I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show.
Jared Dillian. Own your money. Own your life.
Hi, this is Jared Dillian. Catch the Jared Dillian Show from 6 to 8 Eastern only on the Smart Talk Radio Network.